Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives. And if you're on Facebook, welcome. If you are on McDuff Lives 2 on YouTube, welcome. And if you're watching our simulcast on Twitter, you're welcome there. So glad to have everybody interested in a topic which I think really has been skipped over, and one that I wasn't really aware of the importance of it until probably the last week or two when it started to come up in people's conversations. And that, of course, is this big word, antinomianism. And before I get started, let me say hello to Harry and Corky and Miss Hunt, David and Deborah, and everyone else who is here. There's 14 people showing on the YouTube channel, so I'm glad to have everybody here. Thank you, Holly Engel. Thank you, and happy Thursday to everyone. Well, excuse me for starting a little bit late, but I had to restart my computer this morning, and that takes longer than I allowed for it. My bad. But let me get a page up that I want to start with. Just indulge me a second. And here we go. So I'm ready now. Um, well, this idea of antinomianism, I had heard it and I had misunderstood the extent of it, what it really means. But I've noticed it in my in my years, I guess, that sometimes they put a big word on something in order to make it hard for you to study it. I don't know, like these big fat books that they publish with 800 or 900 pages about Lyndon B. Johnson. You know, nobody's going to read 4 or 5 volumes of 800 pages unless you are obsessed with this subject. And so they know that. And so they kind of make it hard for you to see something that's really important that's in there, but you can't know it's there until you do the work. Well, we have noticed also that they make big words sometimes. And I think antinomianism is one of them. And it simply translates. Actually, let's go to Wikipedia and explore exactly what it says. There it is. Nomianism, antinomianism. Okay, let's go to Wikipedia, our favorite source for what the deep state wants us to know. But, you know, it's important to see it from their point of view and then add on our own gloss as we learn things. So let's start here. From ancient Greek anti and nomos, meaning law, is any view which rejects laws or legalism and argues against moral, religious, or social norms, Latin mores, or is at least considered to do so. In some Christian belief systems, an antinomian is one who takes the principle of salvation by faith and divine grace to the point of asserting that the saved, are not bound to follow the moral law contained in the Ten Commandments. All right, I want to stop there because if you don't hear it yet, the resonance of Frankism and the resonance of Thelema, Aleister Crowley's crazy religion, and the whole idea of do as thou wilt, um, power is might, and the avoidance of what I was talking about with David Underdown last night, the traditional Christian golden rule morality that we take for granted as being everybody's basic morality. And what's happening now is people are finding out that that's not always the case, especially the older parts of of what, our we call Western civilization. You go into some areas where stuff happens, and Ukraine is one of those areas. I won't say it's the only one, but crazy stuff. Medieval and just Babylonian ideas still exist. Um, so the next, well, let me stop first and say, with regard to my caption today, I think, I wanted to talk about it in terms of three broad approaches to the idea of how do you make a moral or a correct decision, whether you are moral or not. And the first one is law, and that is, what's the law of what? The law of the land. What's the law of the land? Everybody says that, it's the law of the land. And that's probably a phrase that came from Europe. And, the law of the land depended on if you were migratory or had just had to expand due to overpopulation or flee from a stronger, but, it's about the land. It's about you've got to have this land in order to survive. And that's, what we call the blood and soil culture. And that's a lot of that's still here. And they're very useful people to people that in the CIA that want to get dirty jobs done. So that belief system exists. Well, that's an antinomian belief system where you say, well, I don't care what the Ten Commandments say. I don't care, love thy neighbor as thyself. Get out of here. I'm a free, independent person, and I can talk to God just as well as you can, or I can just say there is no God, and I'm going to do what I will. So within that, we have the Christian form of antinomianism. We also have Frankism, which our friend Bill Taylor has talked about many times. Frankism, the idea of there have to be uh, anti-biblical people that are going to force a conflict that's going to end up somehow bringing the Messiah. I'm not quite clear on it, but it is a way of justifying evil acts, what those of us who follow the golden rule would identify as evil acts. So the law that we have in this country is based upon the sovereignty of the United States of America. It's not based upon the uh, world's idea of morality. It's not based upon a church, and it's not based upon the United Nations Declaration of Rights. It's not based on anything really except for the sovereignty of this country. And if we lose our sovereignty, we will lose our system of law. Do we care? Do we want to preserve this system of law? Well, as Lincoln put it, do we want to be a nation of laws or a nation of men? Men with power, right? And the whole idea is that the Constitution has been interpreted by our Supreme Court to be the supreme law of the land. Supreme law of the land. So in this country, we have a constitution-based legal system. It was interesting to me over the past few days. I guess it's about 3 days ago now, and I'm Twitter subscribed to Ian Davis, who's writing on the pandemic, et cetera, has been really superb, and he's got a very growing following. I have his book. Uh, it's around the corner. I can't remember the name of it, but I did read a lot of it and scan through the rest of it, and he tells the story very well of how people are being abused in this lockdown scenario and elsewise. But he says that voting is wrong. Not only is it futile because it's all controlled, but it sends the wrong message. It says that you are submitting yourself to the criminals that are subverting the system. And there's a lot of people that would agree with him, but I would point out that he is British, and so probably doesn't have that innate sense of, well, we have a constitution, we have a Bill of Rights, you know? There wouldn't have been a constitution unless there had been an agreement to fulfill the demands of the generally the southern and more western people, the individual people, the frontiersmen and families, for a Bill of Rights to defend themselves against the abuse of a central government. So we have that. And without those things, we wouldn't have anything except for tribute to a imperial power that rules over us. So this question of what is the appropriate law, it really does depend upon sovereignty. But once you have sovereignty, you got to hang on to it. And that's one of the things that we've lost in terms of creating these all-powerful, eternally alive corporations that extend all around the world and have far more economic power than we the people have anymore. You know, we can't close down a bankrupt bank. We can't shut down a corporation that violates environmental laws. We know the system is rigged, and it's been rigged a long, long time. But nevertheless, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. If you do, you're going to end up with the rule of men instead of the rule of law. That's my opinion. So much for that. That's the law. Now the next one is what we started talking about with Professor Dolores Cahill, of that um, Irish movement, which is a continuation, as she says, of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and therefore, true legitimate government, such as it is, of Ireland. And I would agree that the present government of Ireland does not serve the purposes for which the Irish fought for freedom. But I am leery of the idea of natural law itself without any particular standards except for, general stuff. Like if you wrong somebody, you owe them. You have to make them whole if you can. You have to compensate them. Well, that's maybe a good example of how the natural law exists in the common